Good morning and welcome to Conversations with Annassa. Can everybody hear okay? Okay, good. So let's start with meditation. Take a deep breath down to the energy center where your energy meets the earth. Breathe into that space. This is the Garden Star chakra, energy center where we place our dreams and water them with our attention. Breathe into that space and feel into the space between your in breath and your out breath in that energy center. Take your attention there. And as you hold your attention there, feel for the energy building. Gathering and accumulating. And you can simply say, I want to know God, or whatever other word you can identify. I want to know the divine. I want to know the goddess. Whatever word fits for you that is inspiring for your spiritual effort. So as the energy accumulates, allow it to rise up to the tip of your tailbone. Breathe into that energy center. Feel into the space between the breaths. I wish to know the goddess. However that wish expresses itself in you is fine. Gently allow your attention to rise up to the sex chakra. Feel into that energy center, into the space between the breaths. I wish to know the goddess. This with the understanding that the goddess is within you. So we're feeling to that which is already there. Feel into the space between the breaths. Gently allow your attention. Energy follows attention. Allow it to rise up to the energy center just below your belly button. Feel into the space between the breaths. I wish to know the goddess. Gently allow your attention to rise to the solar plexus. This is the space just below your rib cage in the front. The place where you get the wind knocked out of you. Breathe into that space. I wish to know the goddess. Feel into the space between the breaths. Gently allow your attention to rise up to your heart center in the middle of your chest. Breathe into that space. Feel for the goddess energy within you. Hold your attention in that space. Gently allow your energy and attention to rise up to your throat center. Feel for the goddess within you. As the energy accumulates, it naturally rises up to the third eye, the center, behind and between your eyebrows, a little bit above them. Feel into that space. For the goddess, God. the divine. That which is our source. Gently take your attention to the top of your head. Feel it opening to allow the pranic plasma to flow down into your being, nourishing every cell in your body. Standing under a shower of pure healing energy. You may feel the energy going two directions at once, coming down and going up in the central channel. There is no contradiction in this flow. When you're ready, take your attention to the top of your aura, where your fingers would touch if you made a halo around your head. Hold your attention there. And feel for the divine. Breathe into that space between the breaths as you hold your attention above your head. Now feel for the torus that your energetic body forms, with the energy rising up out the top of your head in 360 degrees direction, falling down, gathering, and coming up through your central channel. And you will discover that it goes in both directions at the same time. Just feel and align your breath with that flow. When you're ready, bring your attention back to your center. And we'll begin our conversation. So happy to be with you this morning. How may we serve? That was a longer meditation than we usually do, but just sort of happened. Glad you liked it. It's hard to talk after that. So this is a process as you may have noticed by now, working with us, that this energy wakens inside you, and you start to feel things. And that's what it's really about, is taking it deeply inside yourself and feeling, feeling, feeling into your own being, to the source of divinity. And how could we possibly be separate from that? It's not possible. It's a figment of our imagination that we're separate. It's a distortion from our matrix of belief that we are separate from God, Goddess, Source, Divine, whatever we call it. We could not possibly be separate, or we would be dead. And even then we wouldn't be separate, because what's alive about us doesn't die. It can't die. It is life itself. It is vitality. It is the source of being. And when we connect to the truth of that, then we discover we are that. And it colors how we behave in every interaction that happens after we discover that. Because what is alive about us can not be created or destroyed. And the only thing to be careful about with it is that although we are that, we can never let it engage our ego, our self-identity, because we are that, but the only way it can express itself through us is through our matrix of belief, through our blueprint that we come with, which is expressed through our matrix of belief. So we have to understand that this is the energy that powers everything that we do, every thought that we have, but it all flows through our matrix of belief, which is, because of the time and the culture we live in, quite distorted. And so if we take this energy to be our identity without resolving our matrix of belief into some kind of harmony, we'll become a very distorted human being. So this pursuit of internal truth is an integral part of any spiritual practice. What we're really feeling for is the knowing of the truth, because truth has a visceral quality to it. And everybody here already knows that, which is why you're here. You have felt the visceral quality of truth. You have understood the feeling behind the words that is trying to connect you to the reality that we are. And part of that reality is that there is only this moment. Everything else is fantasy. It's either fantasy about the past or fantasy about the future. But the only reality is now. We welcome your questions. Brenda? Drew?
So building on that idea of in the moment, the idea of perception, perceiving uh, the energy, and I'm wondering about how to increase that bandwidth or to recognize. Um, it comes from maybe sitting in the garden and working, and a hummingbird comes up to you, or you're listening to the bird calls that are going on while working. And so part of that is, of course, being quiet, which it's almost like taking meditation out into work.
Well, one of the things you can do to expand your awareness is to make yourself available to communication from nature. And just see where that takes you. Just allow the space that nature might communicate with you, that the plants might be able to speak, that the animals might have something to say or might be demonstrating something. Just hold that possibility of allowing that experience and see what happens. We'll be delighted to hear.
Thank you.
So, in case you didn't hear that question, it was how can you expand your awareness in the field of nature? When you're out in nature, what can you do to be more aware? And the answer was hold yourself open to the possibility that nature might be willing to communicate with you if you are willing to pay attention and listen with your inner voice. Whatever inner voice. And we've spoken before how each of us is put together differently in terms of the sensory perception that we bring to our life. We each have different strengths and weaknesses with our senses and the way we experience the world. So Rebecca, tends to experience the world in a very tactile, sensory, physical, visceral experience. So it's largely kinetic experience, whereas other people have visions, other people have thoughts. And thoughts are very tricky because we never know what part of us they're coming from. And so it's it's tricky. And every one of us has the capacity for enormous mental health and the capacity for enormous mental deception, we'll say. And so we need to be a little bit skeptical about our thoughts and at the same time have room for extraordinary experience. And it's not that the goal is extraordinary experience. The goal is understanding ourselves very deeply, who and what we are, and how we can serve our own lives and the lives of everyone we meet in the best way. Or another way to say that is how we can live out our blueprint in the way that is most beneficial to serving what we have come here to do, in discovering what that is and how to serve it best. And in that way, we are serving ourselves and the whole at the same time. And the best way to cultivate that is to follow the love, peace, joy, and gratitude that naturally arises in us when we are in alignment with ourselves, with our highest best, which is divinity. It is the God, the goddess, the, the source energy expressing itself through us. So, really, our inner work is about self discovery. How may we serve further?
Do we have to resolve unaddressed issues with our matrix of belief before we can heal?
So, the question is, do we have to resolve unaddressed issues with our matrix of belief before we can heal? The answer to that is healing is addressing the issues with our matrix of belief. This is exactly the practice. In addressing our matrix of belief, we are healing ourselves. We are healing ourselves to a certain level of completion so that as we, it's often been likened to a dirty mirror. Our matrix of belief is like a dirty mirror. And as we resolve our misperceptions about who and what we are in this world and who and what is important in order for us to express the highest that's possible for us, each part of ourselves that gets resolved is a little bit of that mirror that is cleared. And eventually, we will be looking at Source itself as it flows through us, as we clear that mirror more and more. And so that mirror is clouded by our matrix of belief, our false ideas about who and what we are, and who and what is important to us in order to know ourselves, the source of ourselves, deeply. We hope that answers your question. So the matrix of belief is not something other than us. It's how we perceive ourselves, and it's how we perceive the world. And so when we look at that carefully, because we're all just handed a matrix of belief by our peers, elders, the institutions that inform us, schools and churches and whatever we came into contact with, these things told us what they thought was in our best interests. And very often they're completely wrong in terms of the highest best for us and everyone else. And so this is what discrimination is. Discrimination is pulling out your matrix of belief and looking at it. Is it true that the best way to live a life is to go out and make money? And sometimes the answer is yes, and sometimes the answer is no. There's not one answer that fits everybody. There's not one answer that fits every situation. And so, as we are confronted by the experiences in our lives and the desires in our hearts, as those meet, we can examine with discrimination to see the truth of our experience and the assumptions that we make about our lives that may or may not be true. And as we examine them and question the truth of our experience, this is where the rubber meets the road and our conversations can really have the most benefit. We hope that answers your question. How may we serve further?
If an animal friend joins us on a trip to the Annassa temple, are they welcome in the temple?
Of course, all parts are welcome, always. You know, there are parts of shamanic practice where, you know, they invoke power animals and such things. And these practices can be helpful or they can be a distraction. It depends on how you use them. And so always discrimination is important. And the question to ask is, how does this serve my highest and the highest of everyone else? The highest for the whole. And everyone else includes our environment. One of the problems in our matrix of belief is that as a culture, we deny that we have any impact on the natural world. And that's a big problem. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, there you're cutting. The internet's kind of going in and out.
Okay, I'm informed our internet is going in and out. So bear with us. There's not a lot we can do about that. But if you don't hear something, please let me know and I'll repeat it. So, yes, these shamanic practices are available with shamanic teachers. We're not really that. But nature can teach you a lot and you can learn to communicate with nature. And sometimes that can be very helpful. But always discrimination is important. Because we can get distracted by anything. All human beings are capable of great distraction. So it's important to come back to source regularly in your meditation practice. And the truth will reveal itself as you open yourself deeper and deeper to the experience of union with the deepest part of yourself. It's not about anything outside you. It is really about cultivating ourselves deeper and deeper and deeper. You know, Ramana Maharshi went inside a mountain in a cave for 16 years. And he learned everything about everything in that cave. And he came out, Arunachala Shiva. Arunachala is the name of the mountain. Shiva is source energy. He was a very great saint, and he hardly ever spoke, and he changed the world and every person that he met. So this inner cultivation is no joke. It's really, really powerful. And it's not just, the one person who goes and sits in a cave for 16 years. This is available to all of us. And the more we cultivate it, the deeper we cultivate it within ourselves, the more we will learn. We forgot the question. We hope we answered it. Did we?
Well, it was about how if animal friends join us on a trip to the Annassa temple, are they welcome in the temple?
Oh, of course.
Yeah. Are the animals support or guides or symbolic in any way?
It depends on our relationship. If there's love, peace, joy, and gratitude in our relationship with that animal, of course. Of course, there is something shared. And, most animals just want to love and play. I mean, some animals want to eat us. So you have to be careful. I mean, how much can you learn from a mosquito? It's about survival and a life that's lived like that. so so different animals have different things, and discrimination is required. It doesn't mean there's nothing to learn from a mosquito. We use mosquito in homeopathy. It's a remedy, and there are sometimes people who need it. So every frequency in this world has something to offer and some resonance. And so what we're really experiencing is frequency, is a part of ourselves that holds the frequency that is in common with a particular being outside of us may resonate. And that resonance creates a certain expression in us that can be fantastic and can be really detrimental to our perception and expression in the world. So it's important that we recalibrate ourselves regularly with meditation so that we can actually pay attention to our alignment and make careful decisions about at least what questions we ask about the frequencies that we are entertaining in our matrix of belief. Because not all frequencies are good, not all frequencies are bad. And good and bad isn't even really what we're talking about. It's, what is drawing us closer to the depth of love, peace, joy, and gratitude that's available to us to express through our lives. So this is really our guide. How much is our alignment? And is this contributing to our alignment, or is it distracting from our alignment? Okay, our internet's playing games again. So what we're saying is that every frequency that we entertain can tell us about our alignment. And so we're looking for frequencies that align us with love, peace, joy, and gratitude. And those we want to cultivate, and those which distract us from that, we can spend less energy cultivating. Now, as we've already discussed at great length, when negativity arises, like the anger side of the mind, it's important to engage Ho'oponopono, because this is usually some block in us that needs to be dissolved so that we can reach deeper inside ourselves. We hope that answers the question. How may we serve further? Screen frozen?
It's going from 4 bars to 5 bars to 4 bars to 5 bars. It just keeps doing this.
And is that not enough?
Sometimes when it drops.
Okay.
But you're not continuously frozen. Or I don't even know if it's freezing. It's 5 bars now.
How may we serve? We're at 5 bars now. You know, our relationships are a good way to know something about the quality of our lives. If we are able to cultivate love in ourselves and reflect that to others, including animals, and have them reflect it back to us, this is definitely helpful. It's not necessary. Ramana went to a cave all by himself. He didn't relate to anybody for a very long time. So there is not one path. But our individual path is definitely to turn our focus inward on our matrix of belief and really to hold our focus on the highest, on the love, peace, joy, and gratitude in us, in cultivating that. So we're not exactly looking for disharmony, we're looking for harmony. And in looking for the harmony, the first thing we'll see is the disharmony, so that we can begin to clear it away to get to the harmony. And for some people, having this reflected in the people around them can make the journey somewhat quicker. For others, being alone is what they attract, and that inner depth and journey is their own cultivation. But if we can make all our yearning a yearning for knowing the divine within us, that can really help a lot. How may we serve further?
Good morning, Becky. It's Margaret.
Oh, hi, Margaret. Good morning.
Good morning. My question is about the power of intention. Could you speak to that a little bit about attracting things into our life by the power of intention? You know, you hear a lot about the power of positive thinking, but then Annassa also talks a lot about, processing our emotions and not pushing the negative away, integrating that. But could you speak a little bit about manifesting and the power of intention?
Yes. Manifesting in the power of intention. Okay. So, where we put our attention is what we are feeding with our energy. And often our attention is not something we're trying to control. So we end up kind of bleeding away a lot of energy because our attention is just kind of dissipating and our mind is just circling around. And what we think about actually makes grooves. Our attention makes energetic patterns that have force.
We know that you can't hear.
Try again.
Yes. Can you hear me now?
Hold on.
Okay.
Can they hear you?
Yeah, they can.
Okay.
Okay.
Sorry
Good.
about that.
So we're back, right? We're good? Okay, good. Okay, what were we talking about? Oh, the power of attention. Attention and intention. So wherever we have our attention, even if it's just going randomly firing, or if we're mad at somebody and we're going over and over in our mind, we are creating, our attention is creating intention, which has power, whether we are doing it intentionally or not. So whatever our mind is doing, it has some power to it. So part of what we're doing is cultivating our deepest self, is putting our attention in a deeper place in us so that it can be more refined in what we are putting out. Because we are transmitters and receivers. And so if we start to view ourselves as whatever we are putting our attention on is being transmitted, so if we start to understand that that's what's happening, then intention becomes a very powerful tool because we're beginning to take responsibility for our attention. That's what intention is when we become responsible for our attention and we use it to create an intention that we repeat, which is what we're building in our Garden Star chakra. When we started the program, we are taking our vision of what we want to create in our lives to the Garden Star chakra, so that whenever we water that place in our energetic field, we are watering our desire to create in a grounded way in this life with our intention to create the life that we would like to be experiencing. And so it's very important that the intentions that we cultivate in our garden star chakra are very, very clear. For example, maybe health and vitality. You know, it's very seductive when we're not feeling well to concentrate all our energy on how bad we feel. So as we do that, we're cultivating feeling bad. Whereas if we want to create health for ourselves, we take the appearance of health, vitality, and the way we want to feel, be, and behave in this world, we plant that in our garden star chakra. We actually have an image and a feeling and this sense of vitality that we want to cultivate. So we ask deeply for that from our garden star chakra. And we concentrate on that image instead of the image of anything else about our lives. So we concentrate our energy on the health, not on the illness. And this is how change happens, is that we focus on that as though it is the current reality. Because this is our intention, is to become this new reality, to be experiencing this new reality. And when we put our attention there long enough, our attention and intention merge, and that is the power of becoming one with our creative ability. And so this is what manifestation is about. It's about merging our attention with our intention and doing it with great intensity. And the more intensity we can bring to the alignment of that attention and intention, the more likely our manifestation is to bring that result. We hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you.
Oh, you're so welcome. So we'll give you a demonstration. Many of you know this story already, but several years before Rebecca was in a position where she had to buy a house, she and Andrew, Annassa encouraged her to create a vision of a house she would like to live in. Now, at the time, she was living in an ashram and assumed that she would be living in that situation for the rest of her life. So she took it as an exercise rather than a real manifestation practice. So she was doing it really as an energetic exercise, not as trying to create or change reality. So she didn't have that idea. And we told her to focus on the most beautiful living experience she could imagine. And because she'd never thought in this way before, she really took it as an exercise of just expanding the way she, what she was thinking about. And so she did that. She thought about the people involved and what would make them happy in an environment and designed that environment. So lo and behold, things changed. And several years later, she needed to manifest a house, she and Andrew. And so we told her it's time to look. And with great trepidation and no money, she started looking. And about the third house she looked at, the real estate agent, which was a friend, said to her, don't you want to go to a broker and see what kind of house you can afford? And she said, no, it's not going to happen that way. I don't know how it's going to happen, but that's not how it's going to happen. And so the broker kind of rolled her eyes, but went along because it was a curiosity for both of them how it was going to unfold. And it unfolded that she knew the second she saw the house that that was the house. And she said to herself, now what's going to happen? And, within 2 or 3 days, all the money appeared, everything happened, and they live in the house. We hope happily ever after. But that was the power of attention and intention. And it also had a healthy dose of naivety. But there was skepticism, but not disbelief. There was just, there was surrender. There was, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know how this is going to happen, but I've been told it's going to, and so I trust it. That was the experience. And so this is how manifestation works, how it can work. And, there was a healthy dose of naivete in that experience. Because, having spent so many years not ever thinking about wanting that, there wasn't really a lot of desire behind it. It was just, this is what's supposed to happen. That was the feeling. And it did. So that's an example of how manifestation can work. And so it's important that you align your attention and intention with great intensity in the garden star chart. And so it becomes a part of your spiritual practice. And then there's always this other element, which is really, and she found herself saying this in the house acquisition process often. And that is that there's always the willingness to say, not my will, but thine. Because any manifestation that's going to be in the highest best is not going to come from ego-driven desire. It's going to come from alignment. And so there is this constant feeling of, if this is in alignment, great. If this is not, also fine, allow that to be demonstrated to me. And when you are in this state of allowing for whatever is in the highest best to manifest, then that is another essential quality of allowing, that you have to be willing to accept whatever result is offered as the highest best in this moment. And then you readjust your vision and go from there. We hope that makes sense. That added element of whatever is in the highest best is really, really important, because that's how we keep our ego out of it. Like, there is no sense that Rebecca manifested this house. The goddess manifested this fact. Annassa manifested this fact. It, it, it was the right thing to happen, but not personal, and yet deeply personal. There is an intersection between the not personal and the deeply personal, and that intersection is the willingness to have it be whatever's in the highest best. That's where the intersection is. It's the ultimate desire that it be in the highest best for the whole. And then whatever happens, happens. We hope that helps. Thank you so much. These things can only be articulated when you ask your questions. So please keep asking.
We seem to have a solid connection since the glitch, so.
Good. I'm told our connection is good now. So how may we serve further? So we're not against abundance. We're all for it. Poverty, the idea that poverty is beneficial or necessary to spiritual practice represents a kind of immaturity. It's an idea that we have. Yes, Ramana went into a mountain and lived on nothing for 16 years. That would be very difficult to accomplish in this culture, because in this culture there's no support for that kind of spiritual expression. In Indian culture, even today, there's a respect for those who choose what's called sadhana as the expression of their lives. And they become wanderers. They do things like living in caves, and the society supports them. They essentially become homeless by intention, and the society supports them. People offer them food because they understand that their life is dedicated to discovering their connection to divinity. And so they are naturally supported by the culture. And that's how they deal with homelessness in India. It's always a choice when people decide they don't want to participate in ordinary life, but they want to be spiritual. And so that sort of has been glamorized into an ideal of poverty being associated with spirituality. But in this culture, that's not really appropriate. In order to have a spiritual life in this culture, you have to be able to manifest some abundance to have the luxury of time alone. So it's different cultures require different things and respect different things. And this is why it's so important to evaluate our matrix of belief and whether it's really serving our spiritual practice. Because, we can get backwards by these romantic ideals that we have that have nothing to do with the reality itself of the culture that we live in. And so matrix of belief and examining it is really, really important as we go along. And being totally honest with ourselves about what our reality is. and that is helpful in our spiritual quest. How may we serve further? Oh, we're being reminded it's time for meditation. So, this is what's really fun anyway. So, at this time, we're going to invite you to go back to the state that we reached in our meditation. And from that place, we will begin to transmit the open eye meditation, which you're welcome to participate in any way you want. We will be transmitting Annassa energy. So we're going to be quiet and invite you to do your own meditation in whatever way works for you as we allow Annassa energy to come through. Thank you so much for being here today. This was such a joy and a pleasure for us to be with you, talk with you. Thank you so much. Till next week. Bye for now.